Hello, AP exam test takers. I'm back. Now I want to talk about the different documents that you need to know in order to do well on the exam next week. There are quite a few that we need to discuss, but these documents are very different, so pay attention. These have all been covered in class, so make sure that you look at your notes as we do this. Okay, let's start with the Federalist Papers. There are 4 Federalist Papers that you need to know. Federalist Paper number 10 is the most famous. It is the one that gives the pluralistic view of politics, which is that as a country, the way that we promote stability and we achieve justice is by having a lot of different groups that Madison calls factions. A faction is a group of citizens that band together to pursue their own private interests. The way that we secure liberty is by having a large republic. As he says in Federalist Paper number 10, extend the sphere, and you take in a greater variety of parties and interests. You make it unlikely that one group will have a common motive to invade the rest of the others. And of course, that is the Madisonian understanding of complex majority rule, that we're not going to just simply have the majority deciding things. You're going to have many factions pursuing their interests. And the solution, by the way, to all the chaos that might emerge is a Republican form of government where we elect our leaders to look at all the factions and figure out what the common good is. Okay? Federalist Paper number 51, also by Madison, which talks about checks and balances. The fact that we don't just simply want to have one person in charge in the government. If I were to ask you, who's in charge of government? The answer is nobody. And the reason is because we have 3 different branches with different powers, but enough powers to check the other branches if they get out of sorts. As he says in Federalist Paper 51, ambition must be made to counter ambition. If men were angels, government would not be necessary. Federalist Paper number 70 is a Hamiltonian masterpiece. It talks about how energy in the executive is the leading definition of good government, that you want energy. A lot of people, even Madison, believed that you couldn't have a republic and have a strong executive. Hamilton said hogwash. As long as you have a system of checks and balances and the separation of powers, energy is good. You want an energetic president when he's enforcing the laws. Why? Because the Congress wrote them. You want an energetic president when he's waging war. Why? Because the Congress declared the war. So energy in the executive is the leading definition of good government. Federalist Paper number 78, another masterpiece by Hamilton, where he says that, look, the judiciary is the least dangerous branch. The only power they have is the power of judgment. The power of the purse and the power to limit liberty, Congress has that. The sword of the community being commander-in-chief, that's the president. All the judiciary has is judgment. It is the least dangerous branch of office. Make sure you also know about the Declaration of Independence. This is the document that created this idea of being separate from the British Empire. Remember, the Declaration of Independence broke us away from Britain. It didn't create the United States of America. The Constitution did. But the Declaration of Independence has a few very important ideas. One, the purpose of government is the protection of natural rights. That's a very Lockean idea instead of life, liberty, or property. Jefferson says the purpose of government is to protect your natural rights, your inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of government, the pursuit of happiness, that the purpose of government is to protect these rights, that if the government's no longer doing this, you have a right of revolution, okay? And so all of these things are in the Declaration of Independence. Now, the first attempt after the Declaration of Independence to create a kind of governing document was the Articles of Confederation. The Articles of Confederation did not work. And that's largely because you didn't have a nation. You had 13 different sovereign quasi-states that governed themselves. The Articles of Confederation was just a league of friendship. There was no president. There was no judiciary. There was no power to tax, no power to raise an army without asking permission, no power to regulate interstate commerce, and the only thing you did have was a Congress. Every single state got one vote, which makes sense if if you see yourself as a quasi-independent nation. You needed 9 out of 13 to pass a law and 13 out of 13 to amend this monstrosity. So you get eventually to the Constitution. Obviously, you should know the 7 articles. Article 1 is about the Congress. Article 2 about the president. Article 3 about the judiciary. Article 4 is the full faith and credit clause. All agreements and legal agreements of one state must be given full faith and credit in the other. Also, that's where we have the Republican clause, that all states must have a Republican form of government. And Article 5 is all about amending the Constitution. Okay. Then make sure you also know all the amendments. I'm not going to take time right now and do all of the amendments, but make sure you know them. Next, Letter from a Birmingham jail, an absolute masterpiece. Martin Luther King writes in the 1960s as he is arrested and he is sitting in a jail in Birmingham, Alabama. Few important arguments here. The first thing he argues is that civil disobedience is essentially the action. This is what Socrates talks about. This is what Thoreau talks about. Civil disobedience is when your individual conscience stands juxtaposed to the law of your state, and how do you behave? And of course, he talks about peaceful. He talks about active but peaceful resistance. He talks about the fact that if some people don't stand up, even the good people, then the bad people are going to get their way. And it's this idea that justice applies to everybody. Justice is not cultural. It is not a construct of race or gender or sexual orientation or class. Justice is absolute. It is rooted in natural law, and therefore it applies to everybody, right? So make sure you know those documents. Good luck.